1. The social self is an illusion created by others. We often assume we are what others say we are, that our identity is shaped by reputation, perception, or the version of ourselves reflected back by society. But the Stoics challenge this illusion at its core. They argue that the social self, the image others hold of you, is not you at all. It's a distorted shadow, projected not by truth, but by limited understanding and personal bias. Marcus Aurelius, in one of his most incisive reflections, wrote, "You are not what others say you are what you do." This simple yet powerful statement draws a clear line between reality and illusion. What people think of you is outside your control, shaped by their assumptions, emotions, and even their own inner conflicts. The image others construct of you is often less a mirror and more a projection, a blend of what they see, what they expect, and what they fear. The Stoic does not fight that image, but he refuses to live for it. Trying to defend yourself against every misjudgment is like chasing your reflection in a broken mirror. You can't fix how others see, you can only remain faithful to who you are. Epictetus pushed this idea further. He taught that reputation belongs to the category of externals, things beyond your power. If you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, he warned, realize that you have compromised your own integrity. This is a harsh truth for many of us because we are conditioned from a young age to value praise, avoid disapproval, and build identities that others can applaud. But in Stoicism, this is considered spiritual slavery. To live for approval is to abandon your sovereignty. It is to allow your well-being to rise and fall with the unstable tides of public opinion. And for what? For applause that can turn to silence. For validation that lasts as long as memory. For admiration that's often based on misunderstanding, not truth. Epictetus drew a radical boundary. What belongs to you, your thoughts, your choices, your principles, that is where you must invest. What doesn't belong to you, the opinions of others, the whispers of the crowd, the status they assign, must be released. Because those things are not real in the way your moral character is real. Seneca, too, was skeptical of the social mask we all wear. He observed, "No one can define you but yourself. Most people talk of others to escape talking to themselves." In that one sentence, he exposes a core psychological truth. Judgment is often projection. Those who label you do so not based on truth, but based on their own lens, shaped by fear, envy, ignorance, or past wounds. They're not truly seeing you. They're expressing something about themselves. Understanding this changes everything. You no longer need to defend yourself against misrepresentation. You no longer need to beg for recognition. You no longer need to modify yourself to fit their image, because that image is not you and never was. The Stoic trains himself to become indifferent to image and obsessed with substance, not in a performative sense, but in the quiet, disciplined manner of one who measures success not by applause, but by alignment with virtue. The world may praise you and be wrong. It may condemn you and still be wrong. Neither condition changes who you really are. True identity is revealed in how you act when no one is watching, in what you do when no one will reward you, in how you live when no one understands you. This, to the Stoics, is the only self worth preserving. So when you hear your name misused or see your image distorted, remember, they are not talking about you. They are talking about a version of you they've invented. Let them. You have something more important to protect, your character, your clarity, your calm. Let the illusion pass, let the echo fade, and return to what is yours, the inner self that needs no audience. 2. Inner freedom begins when you no longer see yourself through the eyes of others. There is a quiet moment, usually born out of fatigue or clarity, when you stop trying to control how others see you. And in that moment, for the first time, you begin to feel free. Not because the world has changed, but because your need for its validation has dissolved. According to the Stoics, this is the threshold of true inner freedom, the decision to no longer identify yourself through the gaze of others. Marcus Aurelius once observed with great lucidity, people try to project themselves into your mind. Don't let them. That is not just advice, it's a spiritual commandment. Because what happens when we allow others to occupy our mental space? We surrender control. We internalize their expectations, their judgments, their imagined versions of us. Slowly, subtly, our mind becomes a battlefield of borrowed voices. Our thoughts are no longer our own. Our self-image becomes a performance crafted for an audience that's constantly changing. For the Stoic, this is unacceptable. The mind must remain sovereign. The inner citadel, as Marcus called it, is not a public plaza. It is a temple of reason, guarded not by walls but by awareness. To preserve your peace, you must deny entry to the intrusions of public opinion, not out of arrogance, but out of loyalty to your own clarity. Epictetus, ever the realist, reminds us that it's not what others think about you, but what you think about yourself that makes the difference. At first glance, this sounds obvious, but live long enough and you'll see how easy it is to forget, how quickly we adjust ourselves to avoid being misunderstood, how easily we trade our principles for applause. And yet the Stoics insist, being misunderstood is not the tragedy. Losing yourself in order to be understood is. This is where the Stoic path diverges from conventional life. The average person longs to be seen in the best light. The Stoic chooses to remain in the shadows if that's what truth requires. For Epictetus, the price of being misjudged is small compared to the cost of betraying your own judgment. If someone thinks poorly of you, but your conscience is clear, what have you lost? Nothing. But if you bend yourself to fit their assumptions, then you have paid a high price for a low reward, their temporary approval at the cost of your inner compass. Seneca, the most psychologically perceptive of the Stoics, framed the matter succinctly. A wise man is content to be what he is, not what others expect him to be. There is immense power in this simplicity. To stand still in your truth while the world rushes past with labels, comparisons, and gossip, this is the Stoic definition of dignity. The wise man does not chase after a reputation that pleases others. He is not flattered by praise, nor wounded by insult. Because he does not live inside the mirror of society, he lives in the clear light of reason. And reason, unlike reputation, does not shift with the crowd. To break free from the social self is not to become isolated, it is to become anchored. It is to plant yourself in the soil of your own understanding rather than in the shifting sands of public approval. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to others or hostile to feedback. It means refusing to let others define your worth. You listen, yes, but you do not surrender your sovereignty. True inner freedom begins when you realize you don't owe the world an image. You owe yourself a life, one built not on performance but on principle. So if you find yourself exhausted by the eyes upon you, remember this. They are only eyes. They cannot see your intent, your battles, your values, or your private victories. And if they cannot see your essence, why should their vision define you? Let them look, let them guess, let them speak. You remain where you are, not in their gaze, but in your mind, not in their story, but in your own, not in the world's mirror, but in the unshakable stillness of your inner self. 3, your true self cannot be judged, only your actions can. There's a profound truth that echoes throughout Stoic philosophy. Your essence as a person cannot be judged by others. Why? Because what you truly are, your intentions, your discipline, your inner resolve, lies hidden beneath the surface, beyond the reach of external observation. What others see is only the result, the performance, the visible fragment of a far more complex inner life. And yet, society rushes to label, to praise, to condemn, often with no access to what matters most. The Stoics urge us to resist this superficial game. Marcus Aurelius put it simply but powerfully, judge yourself not by words but by deeds. Reputation, gossip, criticism, they all float like fog across the surface of your life. But beneath that fog are your actions, the one true measure of who you are. Not your intentions, not your ambitions, not the stories others tell about you. Only what you choose to do and how consistently you choose it defines you. When someone misunderstands you or distorts your story, what have they truly touched? Not your core, not your values, not your real self. They've interacted only with a shadow, an image they formed through limited understanding, through hearsay, or through the lens of their own insecurities. The wise person does not attempt to correct every misconception. Why bother? As Marcus reminds us elsewhere, leave the wrong with the wrongdoer. Let them speak. Let them judge. Let them be wrong. Your duty is not to please, but to act rightly. Epictetus adds an even more humbling insight. Others may judge the result, but you alone know the struggle. It's easy for an outsider to look at your life and assess it from the outside, your income, your appearance, your success or failure according to their terms. But what do they know of the battles you faced in silence? What do they know of the nights you endured quietly, the temptations you resisted, the growth no one applauded? Only you can know how far you've come. Only you can understand what it cost you to arrive where you are. That's why the Stoic draws their sense of self not from social validation, but from personal effort. They cultivate an inner barometer, a moral compass, to track progress, not the applause of the crowd, but the quiet sense of having lived by principle. This is not arrogance, it is integrity. The outside world judges results, but the Stoic lives by effort, by intention, by alignment with reason. And this inner alignment is invisible to the impatient and superficial eyes of the crowd. Seneca warns us of the dangers of trying to win approval through performance. He who seeks to please everyone pleases no one, least of all himself. Trying to be liked by all is not a virtue, it's a trap, because the more you shapeshift to meet the expectations of others, the further you drift from yourself. And the more approval you gain, the more approval you need, a hunger that only grows with feeding. Soon you find yourself not living but reacting, performing a version of yourself that suits the tastes of others. You stop making choices based on reason and start making choices based on optics. But what good is a life lived for the gaze of others if, in the process, you lose the gaze of your own soul? The Stoics teach us to be rooted, not in image, but in action, not in reputation, but in character. The wise person acts not to impress, but to align with what is right, even if no one sees it, even if everyone misunderstands it. Let people talk, let them misunderstand. You are not obligated to correct every false narrative. Instead, double down on your principles. Let your actions be your answer. Let your consistency be your argument. Let your integrity be your legacy. Because in the end, your true self cannot be seen, only lived. And the only mirror that matters is the one held by your own conscience. For the crowd doesn't care about you as much as you think. It's easy to imagine that the world is watching us, that our actions are being scrutinized, judged, weighed constantly by the people around us. But this belief, however persistent, is largely a delusion. One of the most liberating truths you can embrace is this: most people aren't thinking about you at all. The Stoics understood this long before the age of social media. They knew that human beings are generally too preoccupied with their own concerns to focus deeply on anyone else. And even when they do form opinions about you, those opinions are rarely based on understanding. More often, they're shaped by projection, impulse, and ignorance. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know what they're talking about. Think about that. How often do people form conclusions about your life without context, without insight into your story, your struggle, your principles? Why then should we let those shallow judgments shape how we see ourselves? When you realize how quickly others move on from their thoughts about you, how rarely they dwell on your words, your choices, or your presence, you begin to understand that much of your anxiety is rooted in illusion. You're not under a microscope. You're just a fleeting thought in someone else's passing day, and even that thought is filtered through their own biases and distractions. Epictetus expands on this with a sharp metaphor. Public opinion shifts like the weather. One day they love you, the next they destroy you. This is not a flaw in you, but a feature of the crowd. Fickle, reactive, inconsistent. Why then would any wise person try to build a stable identity on such shifting ground? If you base your self-worth on how others perceive you, you are like a man building a house on sand. It may stand for a moment, but it will crumble with the tide. The wise build their foundation on what is stable: virtue, discipline, clarity of thought, not applause, not image, not trends. Seneca, ever the realist, said it best: reputation is an echo, not the truth. The things people say about you, the labels they attach, the rumors they spread, these say more about them than about you. A bitter man will see arrogance in your confidence. An insecure person will see threat in your growth. A jealous person will see deceit in your success. So, when you hear criticism or praise, remember, it's a reflection, not a revelation. It's noise, not knowledge. You are not defined by what echoes back to you from the voices of the crowd. You are defined by how you act when no one is watching. by how you choose when no one is cheering, by how you live when the spotlight has moved on. That is the Stoic strength, to live rooted in internal judgment, not external reaction. To act according to reason, not popularity. To be firm in one's path, even when the crowd mocks or misunderstands. This is not to say that feedback is useless or that all opinions are irrelevant. A wise person listens but does not become enslaved. They learn but do not perform. They respond with patience but do not mold themselves to fit every expectation. Because in the end, you only lose yourself when you forget that most people aren't even paying attention. They're too absorbed in their own lives to care deeply about yours. And if that sounds disheartening, let it be freeing instead. You don't have to carry the burden of public perception. You are not here to be endlessly understood. You are here to live well, to live rightly, and to live truthfully. Even when no one notices, especially when no one notices. So let the crowd talk. Let them guess. Let them praise today and forget tomorrow. Your task is not to impress them. Your task is to stay loyal to the path of integrity. Everything else is just noise. 5. The Stoic portrait, defining the self from within. In an age where identity is often curated, filtered, and validated through screens and social feedback, the Stoic seeks something deeper, quieter, and infinitely more powerful. A self defined not by others, but by inner principles. To be Stoic is to understand that who you are is not what the world says about you, but what you consistently choose to be, in thought, in action, and in intention. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations as an emperor and philosopher, offered a piercing truth. A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions. In other words, your value is not measured by your status, your resume, or your social visibility. It is measured by the quality of your goals. What are you pursuing? What animates your daily efforts? What ideals shape your choices? For the Stoic, the highest ambition is not applause or recognition, but virtue. To act justly, to think clearly, to remain composed. These are goals that require no audience and yet define character far more than titles ever could. Your real self is not the version others recognize, but the one that holds itself to the standard of reason, the logos, the universal rational order that the Stoics believed governs all things. Epictetus sharpened this conviction into a principle of personal sovereignty. Don't explain yourself. Your actions are your explanation. A Stoic does not argue with the world about who he is. He shows it, and when misunderstood, he does not rush to correct every false impression. He knows that to be truly independent means to live by inner laws, not outer approval. To live like a principle, not like a performance. That is the Stoic's aim. This is not pride nor aloofness. It is discipline. It is the strength to build identity from within so that even when the world misnames you, you remain unmoved. You know who you are because you've chosen who to be, and you reaffirm that choice not through declarations, but through daily consistency. Seneca, ever the dramatist of Stoic thought, likened life to a stage, but he warned against mistaking life for theater in the worst sense, where people scramble for the spotlight, inflate their roles, and lose themselves in the need for applause. The fool, Seneca observed, is the one obsessed with playing a great role. The wise, on the other hand, are content to play an honest one. You don't need a starring role to live a meaningful life. You don't need recognition to do the right thing. You don't need praise to be good. What you need is sincerity and the courage to be kind, disciplined, and virtuous, even when no one is watching, especially then. A free person, Seneca reminds us, is not someone admired by many, but someone who needs no admiration at all, who stands quietly in integrity, who treats others well without needing gratitude, who fulfills their role not for applause, but because it is right. This is the Stoic portrait, a person who draws the contours of their identity not from the brushstrokes of public opinion, but from the clarity of inner conviction. They do not outsource self-worth to culture or let others dictate their value. Instead, they rise each day with one mission: to live according to reason, to serve justice, and to cultivate a peace that cannot be stolen. And when the world misunderstands them, as it surely will, they remain firm, because they are not here to be understood. They are here to be whole. 6. Who are you if no one is watching? Who are you when no one applauds, no one notices, and no one cares? Strip away the eyes of the world. Remove the validation, the criticism, the endless digital mirrors. What remains? That is the question Stoicism asks you to confront, not someday, but today. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by power, fame, and responsibility, wrote not for others, but for himself, to remind himself who he was and who he must strive to be. His call to integrity was simple and severe: stand up straight, not straightened. Don't wait for others to hold you up. Don't depend on the world to give you posture or purpose. Your dignity must be self-generated. Your values must be self-sustaining. Real character doesn't require confirmation. It only needs commitment. If the world turns its back on you, can you still look yourself in the mirror and say, I stood for what was right? Can you persist in being kind, honest, disciplined without needing applause or recognition? If yes, then you are free. Because the greatest strength is not in being seen, but in being steadfast. Epictetus, born a slave and rising to become a teacher of emperors, taught that indifference is not apathy, it is clarity. He wrote, be indifferent to what makes no difference. Public opinion, temporary fame, fleeting approval. These things don't define you. So why chase them? In fact, it is often when the noise fades, when no one is watching, that you finally see clearly who you are. When society forgets you, when attention turns elsewhere, you are gifted something rare, a chance to become real, to shed the masks, to abandon the act, and to build yourself from the inside out. This obscurity is not exile, it is initiation. It's the beginning of the journey inward, the path where true power lives. Seneca, with his usual precision, warned, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. In our frantic desire to be seen on social media, in the workplace, in the judgments of others, we lose ourselves. The more we scatter our identity across perceptions, the less we are anchored in reality. But when the world goes silent, when the lights dim and no one is left to watch, then comes the most important question. Is there still something burning within you? Or has it all been performance? The silence of the world is not your enemy. It is your invitation to listen to the quiet voice within, to reclaim the sovereignty of your soul, to stop asking, what do they think of me? And start asking, what do I truly think of myself? This, the Stoics remind us, is the foundation of freedom. To not be shaped by opinion, but by principle. To not rely on attention, but on alignment with what is right. Even if no one else sees it. Especially if no one else sees it. You are not the sum of your likes, your titles, or your mentions. You are what you consistently choose when no one is looking. You are what you do when doing the right thing is invisible. You are your private commitments, your quiet efforts, your inner fire. So ask again, who are you if no one is watching? If your answer is still clear, strong, and self-directed, then you are already living as a Stoic. You are already free.